Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. A little bit of a different opening today. This is a new opening. If you listen to the original podcast via megaphone, you would have heard something completely different. But now this is on YouTube because we had a chance to update this a little bit. I'm going to play an interview with Jay Gruden in a minute. And that was taped before we knew about the Dan Snyder news. The team put out a statement that the team is seeking or partnering with Bank of America to seek a transaction for the team. That means the team is up for sale. Now, what we don't know at this point is it for a minority ownership or is it for the majority team, the whole team? We don't know that yet. A Commander spokesperson said they're keeping all options open. When I talk to other people, they say basically their thing is you don't go down this road unless you're going to walk completely to the end. In other words, that's what they're expecting. But we don't know anything for official yet, so this will be an ongoing situation. Why now? Don't know. That's another question we don't know the answer to, and I apologize for not knowing that answer, but I'm not sure anybody really does. I do know that 2 weeks ago they put out a statement that said Dan Snyder would never sell the team. 2 weeks later, now they're partnering with Bank of America. I was also told the NFL has not gone to them with any results of any investigations that remain ongoing, and so I don't know if it's because of anything in there. I was told that Dan Snyder has not talked to Mary Jo White as part of her investigation, so I don't know I don't know if that has anything to do with it. It could just be that the Snyders say they're just tired of all this and it's time to get out. I don't know. And so I think there's so much more to learn, but I did want to at least give you some of those updates. What we also know is this team would fetch probably more than $5 billion if it indeed is sold. And again, going back to the minority ownership, one thing that somebody else told me is, would somebody want to get involved with this franchise right now with all the stuff that's ongoing and knowing that Snyder his name right now is toxic to people? Would you want to get involved with that now until you know everything's cleared up? So much more to learn with all this, how this could affect the stadium deal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So check back with us for more updates throughout the week on ESPN.com, on Twitter, on the podcast. We'll have more updates for you. Right now, I'm going to go back to the football field with my interview with Jay Gruden. We talk about Kirk Cousins. We talk about Kevin O'Connell. We talk about that 2017 roster where there's some crazy dudes on there. But also, we start off talking about Terry McLaurin and what Jay Gruden thought of him. Also, at the end, John Allen, Deron Payne, guys he also had as well. So there you go. I apologize for not knowing more, but I wanted to at least give you a little bit of an update. So here's my interview with former Washington coach Jay Gruden.
Well, Jay, it's good to see you. And I do want to start. I want to get into Kirk Cousins. You know him well. You know how it ended here and all that. But there's another guy that was here at the end for you who is doing really well. It's Terry McLaurin. So I wanted to start with him just because you were here when you guys picked him. How surprised are you by what you've seen, how you've seen him progress in the NFL?
I'm not too surprised, to be honest with you. We liked him coming out. Obviously, we got him in the third round. People say if you like him better, you take him in the second. We lost our second round pick because we traded for Montez Sweat to move up. So we didn't have a second round pick. Otherwise, we would have taken him there. But watching him at the Senior Bowl, we felt like he had the tools to be a dynamic player with the speed and the power that he had. And then obviously what people don't understand is his off the field intangibles. Being a 2-year captain at Ohio State says a lot about him, his work ethic. He's always going to be there on time. He knows what to do. He's a very intelligent player. And for the culture of your football team, the more Terry McLaurin you have on your team, the better off you'll be, because that rubs off on younger guys coming up, who don't know how to prepare, who don't know how to work in practice. When you see a guy like that with his type of ability, how hard he works in the off season in the weight room and training and in practice, running every route like it's his last one, that makes your team better.
Because I remember when he was drafted, it was like, if nothing else, a good receiver, but also a special teams player. I think he's taken one special team snap in his time here. So, but if I remember right, in the spring he looked pretty good, but in training camp he looked really good. When did you start to see that this kid could be more than even what you guys thought?
I thought it was in the spring. Personally, just being around him, just watching routes versus air, watching him come off the line of scrimmage, you know what I mean? And the ability to use that speed and be able to come out of breaks. A lot of guys can run fast, but it takes them, a lot of patter steps to get out of their breaks. Terry does have a little bit of stiffness, but he can get out of his breaks. every route looks the same, and getting off the jam. We're in a little play bump and run in the spring. So in training camp, when guys were able to crawl up in his face and his ability to get off the line, that's when we knew that this guy's going to be pretty good, because if you can't jam him, he's going to run by you. And if you play off, he's a great free access route runner as well. And he's tough and he's smart. I mean, it's no brainer.
And it's funny you say that too, because sometimes when I'm watching practice, I'll watch how he comes out of a route versus someone else or a break, and he does it with fewer steps. It may take someone 7 or 8 steps to get somewhere. He may take 5. Is that kind of what you see? And what does that say about him? Why can he do that?
The difference in him being able to do that, he's running a lot faster than those other guys too. So that makes it difficult for him to come out of those things. He does. Yeah. And then his hands, there's some questions about his hands coming out. He had his hands in weird positions at times, but he doesn't drop many balls, if any. And he goes up and gets the contested balls as well. So when you're talking about what weakness does he have, I don't really think he has one. Maybe just a little bit stiff coming in and out of breaks, just a tiny, tiny bit if you're really going to be critical. But the strengths that he has, the speed, the power, the leadership, everything, the smarts that he plays with, the intangibles that he has, the ability to recognize when the quarterback's in trouble, he knows where to go, has a great feel for the football game. The things you can't coach, he dominates. The things you can coach, he dominates. And he dominates the off the field issues as well. He's a great, great person.
It's funny because what I always like talking to him about different corners, because he knows how to attack different corners. He knows I know a lot of guys should know that, but he seems to really know how to attack guys too.
Yeah, he studies the game. That's what great players do. The great talented players aren't just going out there on Sundays and running a go ball. Some of them might, but they have to study techniques. They have to study leverages. Is it outside leverage, inside leverage? If I have a tight split, is he going to play outside? Is he going to play off? Is it cover 2? Is it cover 3? Is it quarters? What do I attack, the inside digit, the outside digit? He has a great feel for all that. And you tell him what to do and what you're looking for on a certain play. He understands it and he does it right the first time, the second time, and every time, which is it's a great trait. You can formation him however you want to. He'll break the huddle, know exactly where to go. He'll help other guys along. He knows the concepts. I wish I could find something negative to say, because usually I can, and I can't say anything negative about him.
I mean, it is like he's the package, right? And where does it's maybe a hard thing to answer because there are a lot of good receivers in this league, but how does he stack up with when you look at the top receivers?
Well, I think with the quarterback issues they've had, he probably doesn't have the production of some of these other guys. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's at the top of the class, Stephon Diggs and Waddle now, and a lot of talk about Devontae, but he's having some issues over there in Oakland for whatever reason. But right after those top 4 or 5 guys, you got to put him in the mix, right? I mean, he's made big plays despite not having imagine if he was at Green Bay, how many catches he'd have? I mean, yeah, it'd be a lot. So, but I think he's made the best of the situation that he has. Number one. Number two, he doesn't ever gripe about anything. You know what I mean? He may not get the ball the entire half, and he's not going to be in there throwing his helmet, yelling at the coaches and all that stuff. He'll be in there, hey, what's the next play going to be? What's the next shot we're going to take? He wants to know moving forward. He doesn't cry about the past. He always is just looking forward to playing the next play.
How many receivers would cry to you at halftime?
I'd have a few. Deservedly so sometimes. Sometimes, you got to get the rock, but he's very similar. I had AJ Green for 3 years as rookie year. AJ Green was just a great team player. Obviously not as gifted as Terry as far as the mental part of the game, but he was a great unselfish player. And if you have an unselfish receiver, it just makes everybody better. It puts less pressure on the coach. Oh my God, I got to get him the ball. You know what I mean? Which coach should be trying to do that anyway, but it does put a little less pressure on the quarterback and the coach. When the player's not coming in the huddle, say, hey man, throw me the ball, yelling at the quarterback's got a lot of stuff to do in his mind. He can't service everybody individually. So he's got to go through his progressions and his reads, and to have receivers that are patient and unselfish is a critical part to success of an offense.
Is it hard to sometimes, just because everyone's like, get him the ball, can it be hard to just say, okay, we're going to get him the ball right here? Is that hard? Is a hard thing to do, or is that easy?
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. You could put them in a slot and have them run an option route, but they drop the defensive end right underneath it. Then you got to progress. You could put them outside on a hitch route and they play cover 2 and he converts it to a fade right into the safety, and you got to come off the route. I mean, there's certain, you play run a curl route, and it could be quarters, and he's doubled. So
right.
there's a lot of coverage that will take him away or try to take him away. That's what they do to great players. Bill Belichick's made that famous as far as taking away your number one option. And that's going to happen from time to time. That's why Samuel has to step up, and the tight ends have to step up, and Kizik and Gibson have to step up in those times when Terry is getting taken away.
What have you thought about Heineke? I mean, there's something like, we know all the flaws and all that, but what have you thought about him?
I like the way he plays. I mean, I mentioned this earlier. He reminds me of Jeff Garcia a little bit, in the fact that he's not a very tall guy, but he has great pocket skills, great pocket awareness, the ability to make plays, unscripted plays, which are not easy to coach. You know what I mean? And that's critical in this day of pro football, especially if your offensive line is struggling. You got to be able to get outside the pocket. You see Brady and Stafford are struggling a little bit right now. They don't really create a whole lot of things. If the offensive line is struggling or receivers are having trouble getting open, it's tough down. You know what I mean? It's tough to play. Whereas you can get a little bit of relief if your quarterback does break contain. And Taylor's very gifted at that. And I think it's been a big boost for their offense.
Is he a guy, when you look at him, do you see good backup, or do you say this guy can start and win? I mean, in this last 10, he's 7-3, so he's doing something right.
Yeah, he's already proven the fact that he can. I mean, there's not a whole lot of proof in the pie pudding, but he is 7-3. To win 7 games in the National Football League as a starting quarterback is a hell of a feat. I don't care how you win. If you win 17-13 or 20-10 or whatever it is, you're still putting your team in position to win. And I just feel like the added addition of his mobility and ability to make plays that are off schedule are critical in this day of age in pro football.
Absolutely. And, the players respond to him too. Let's get to Kirk Cousins, because you know him well. And, you were here when he was here and you had him. And when you look back on that situation, what jumps out first?
Well, I think, it's tough for Kirk because he came in as a second fiddle, and he always felt like he was a second fiddle here. I think what really pushed Kirk over the top to being a productive, solid, great NFL quarterback is when we announced him as a starter for the entire season. Because now he's not looking over his shoulder. You throw a bad pass as a quarterback, last thing you want to do is see the other quarterback warming up on the sideline. Right. You know what I mean? So when the coaches have the quarterback's back and the quarterback feels that is a genuine thing, I think that made Kirk really more comfortable and be able to play within himself and do the things that he needed to do to be successful. And I think all the players responded. At that time, we made that decision. We had a pretty good receiving core. We thought he was best fit for the type of players we had around him. We could get the ball out to Jordan Reed and Pierre and Deshaun and Jameson and whoever else we had. So I think, and he just continued to make strides and understand the game. He's a smart kid. He's a very disciplined guy. He works hard. He's a very accurate anticipation type guy. He's great on the naked bootlegs. Yeah. Obviously, he does have some issues when there is pressure. He's not as mobile as most quarterbacks, the ones we just talked about, like the Josh Allens or Heineke or what have you. But he can find his check down. He knows where everybody is on the field, and he's an efficient quarterback and very successful and very durable, which, I mean, he hasn't never missed a game. Right. And that's hard to do in this day and age. And you get a quarterback like that, sure, a lot of fans and a lot of owners and a lot of coaches might say, man, we got to get somebody better. You're not – it's hard to find Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, all right? It's not going to happen very often, once in every 20 years. So if you get a guy like Kirk who can run the show, is a good leader, he's tough, he's accurate, has great anticipation, you ride with him.
And that's what I was going to ask you too, is how hard it is to find that guy, because there are enough quarterbacks in that kind of mid-tier level that teams have to make decisions on, and it's a damned if you do or you don't, because you're either paying them a lot, maybe more than what you'd want, or you're starting over.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's $1 million question. That all organizations in pro football, the number one thing you got to do is find a quarterback, and you to build your team around that person, and hopefully he stays healthy. And that's what the great ones have done. That's why Mike Tomlin was in Pittsburgh for so long. I had Big Ben, and Belichick had Brady, and Peyton had Breeze. And they're able to build their team around those quarterbacks, and you have the luxury of you're calling the same play over and over to the same quarterback year after year, and he feels very comfortable, and we can adjust the scheme to who we have, and the communication between coordinator to quarterback and head coach to quarterback is consistent, and it's just so much easier. Whereas the option B is, okay, let's try to go get one. We'll take a chance with this guy. He doesn't pan out. Okay, we'll go get this guy. Let's find this guy in free agency. Let's trade for this guy, trade 3 1s, and he doesn't pan out. It could be a nightmare, and it costs a lot of coaches' jobs.
Yeah. And so when did you know he was gone, that he would be gone and leave?
I personally felt like he was going to be gone when he didn't sign a contract initially. He played on the first franchise tag, the second one for sure. Because I think we put a pretty good offer out there, but I just feel like Kirk wanted to change. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the owner. Maybe it was the GM. Maybe it was the players we had. I don't know. But maybe it was the fact that he always second fiddle to Robert when he got here. He felt, there was no loyalty to him. I don't know. But we did reach out, or we did stick our necks out a little bit and announce him as a starter, which hopefully he appreciates. And he produced for us in a big way, which allowed me to get a couple more years on my contract. So I'm always in debt to Kirk Cousins, the way he played, the way he competed. So I have nothing but love for Kirk, and hopefully he feels the same about me. But I just felt like he wanted to change. And I thought that the biggest mistake we made as an organization, probably in 100 years, is not getting something for him. You have you have a commodity like that. There's not many of them. You have to maximize what you get for it, and we got nothing for it. A 3rd round conditional pick, I believe, and that's insane for a $100 million quarterback.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you, because I know at the time, in talking to people there, like you weren't the only one who thought that. Why didn't it happen, do you think?
I don't know. I think one of the reasons was one of the teams that wanted him was a guy that came from our staff, and they didn't want to. I think that was the main thing. But I know there's other teams. Jets were interested in him. Obviously, Minnesota was interested in him. They signed him. There was more than one team after him, not just San Fran, but those other teams were also interested in him. And for us not to try to find something for him is a big mistake, huge mistake. I mean, where you get 2 1s and 2 2s, I mean, it doesn't fix your quarterback situation, but at least gives you some ammunition to maybe go get another one,
right?
From a team, or trade up and get the first pick in the draft or second pick in the draft.
And were there serious discussions at the time about that? Or was it just...
No, I think the only thing I ever heard is we're going to re-sign him. And I said, great. And I was just thinking to myself, I don't think there's any way he's coming back, but go for it. I'd love to help.
The math never added up. Like because to me, once you guys tagged him, he was always going to be ahead of the game. Like it was going to be more than what people there wanted to think.
Kirk's not dumb now. Kirk, he's not a selfish guy, but he wants his money. He knows what the market value is, and he is a very intelligent guy, and he saw that he had total control as long as he stayed healthy, and he's always been durable. He felt confident that we're going to protect him. He's going to protect himself, and he was going to make the most of his situation because, let's face it, as a pro football player, obviously you want to win and you want to provide for your family, but you also want to strike when the iron's hot. And Kirk maximized the hot iron, and he had total control, and good for him. I'm happy for him and his wife, and they're loving it up there in Minnesota.
Have you talked to him much?
Very little, but yeah, I keep in touch with him a little bit.
So if I remember right, because we get to that last year, 2017, and he wants 30. You guys seem to be comfortable in that 23 range. Is that about what you remember?
I was not in.
I know you're not deciding
levels. Yeah, so I was just sitting on the sideline hoping that he would walk through the door eventually and have a nice sum of money in his pocket, but it never happened.
How was it? Because at the end of that tenure too, there's tension. Was there tension at all?
I think there's always going to be a little tension when you're offering some money, and the agents and the GM and the president and the owner. I think they're, when you're negotiating for that long, obviously there's going to be some tension. That's natural in any business transaction. So I think Washington felt like we were giving them enough money. We're very fair, very loyal, and Kirk was probably like, I just want this, and they didn't get it. So there's probably some headbutting, but at the end of the day, it's a business deal, and Kirk did what was best for him, and we got stuck.
And the funny thing is, like this team, when they were looking last offseason, they called every team that had a possible quarterback opening or trade possibility. They did call the Vikings about him, which would have been interesting, but obviously the Vikings didn't want to trade him. How have you seen him progress as a quarterback?
I think that he's had some different offensive coordinators in Minnesota. Now he's got Kevin O'Connell, which is kind of back to what he did here a little bit. I know Kevin's branched off and done a lot of different things, as Sean did when he left. But I think they're going to play to his strengths. And playing for an offensive head coach also makes a big difference, because when you're a play caller for a defensive head coach and things aren't working, and then you feel you got to run the ball, you got to do what he wants, you're not really doing what's best for Kirk and the offense, that becomes tough in the mind of an offensive quarterback or a coordinator and a play caller and a quarterback. So having the luxury of having Wes Phillips, Chris O'Hara, the quarterback coach, obviously Kevin O'Connell, is going to help him a lot. And it also helps they have some pretty damn good players. I mean, they got one of the best receivers in the league. Adam Thielen is a great receiver. Dalvin Cook is unbelievable. They just get T.J. Hawkinson. K.J. Osborne, heck of a player. Their offensive line still struggling a little bit, but the way Kevin utilizes the quick passing game, the choice game, getting him outside the pocket has really been a benefit for him. And obviously the threat of Dalvin Cook is huge.
Yeah. What have you thought about what Kevin has done? I mean, you had him here. The funny thing is, like, they always talk about the Shanahan tree. You've had a few guys here who've gone on to do pretty well too.
Yeah, I would like to think that. I mean, but I don't get any credit for anybody except I don't know. But anyway, that's a sore subject. But I feel like he's done a great job. I'm proud of him, and I'm glad he's got the opportunity. Walked into a great situation. Usually as a head coach for your first time, you're walking into a mess, and you've got a lot of fix. And he walked into Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. He had some weapons. The defense was a little bit banged up. We got some guys healthy. Hunter come back, and linebacker Kendricks came back. So they're still struggling a little bit at corner, probably in safety, but I still think that he had enough pieces that he could implement a system, change the way they did things from a defensive-minded head coach, bring some positive energy in there. But still, at the end of the day, most important thing is to win, so people believe in what you're doing. You lose your first couple of games, people are like, oh, what the heck, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Everybody starts pointing fingers, but to have success early is critical for a new head coach because they'll rally around you and they'll continue to believe in what you're doing.
Do you have with Kirk any sort of because he was an interesting guy because he's so regimented, the 15-minute increments and all that. What stands out about you with him? Like, is there anything besides, along those lines where it's a little bit quirky, but it worked for him?
Yeah, you're exactly right. He was very detail oriented. That's probably one of my downfalls. He's probably the opposite of me, which is good sometimes. You don't want two similar guys, but very detail oriented. That's why it was very important for me to have good quarterback coaches, offensive coordinators like Sean and Kevin, because they were both very detail oriented. I like the meat and potatoes. I'd install the plays most of the time. Sometimes Sean would, sometimes Kevin would, but I was more of the concepts. And here's the big picture versus this coverage. Boom, boom, boom. Kirk, what is it? 3 steps? Is it 2 steps? Is it 1 step? Is it 1 hitch? Is it 2 hitches? He is very detail oriented in that regard on every single play. And to have guys like Kevin and Sean just go through the details, that makes Kirk better and more comfortable in everything that he's doing. He's detail oriented. He's a rep guy. He wants to see everything. Why are you calling this play? Here's why. He wants to see it in practice. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't want it in the game plan. If you call a play in practice and it doesn't look very good, that play's out. And that's great feedback. That's why you practice, and that's why the communication you have to have with your quarterback. What plays you like, what plays don't you like. Sometimes it hurt my feelings. It might be one of my favorite plays that he hated. I'd be like, damn it, I really like that play, but we'll take it out. I'm not playing, you are. So, but yeah, he's a great kid, great guy. Went through a lot here, being second fiddle to starter to getting yanked, going back in, getting booed, getting applauded. But I think overall, as 6 years, I think he wouldn't trade him in. I think it was a great experience for him, made him into a better person, a better player.
And for you, like, you've seen what's happened here at that position. So when you look back at that, because you guys did go out and get Alex Smith, and then you guys were doing pretty well. You're 6-2, and then he gets hurt. Do you look back at that as like that's the turning point, or is it letting Kirk go?
Well, like I said, Kirk is going to go. So say he was going to go no matter what. So we had no control over it. Not getting the things we should have got for Kirk was a major turning point. And then the second turning point was Alex getting hurt. I mean, Alex, we were pretty good.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, we were going to beat Houston, and it would have been 7-2 and had a 2-game lead in the NFC East.
Yep.
Then he gets hurt, and you go to Colt, and Colt plays on a short week, and then the following week he breaks his leg. The season's over. I mean, not a lot you can do. We tried Sanchez, but then we went to Josh Johnson because he could run a little bit and won a game and almost beat Tennessee. Still almost made the playoffs, but it's tough. That's why quarterbacks and coaches, great quarterbacks and great coaches usually work hand in hand. You got to have the trigger man. If you don't have the trigger man, you're going to struggle. And then you throw in all the other injuries that we had, and then the Trent Williams situation. You're going from the best left tackle in the history of the game to 37-year-old guy you get off the street. So that's a major drop. And then there's other positions too that we had that struggled.
So one of the things too I want to ask you about too in this last couple minutes here, 2017 roster. This is what, and I forgot that they're on the same roster, but it's like Zach Brown, DJ Swearinger, Junior Gillette, Josh Norman, Bashaud Breeland. That's some personalities you guys had to deal with.
Yeah, it was. It was interesting, and obviously you will deal with some personalities if they're performing extremely well on the field. You know what I mean? And sometimes as a coach, that's the balancing act you have to do. If you're late to a meeting, you fine them or you don't fine them. But he's having 15 tackles in the game. He's a great leader for your team on the field. You might deal with some of those things. But if they're playing average on the field and they're a problem, you got to be able to get rid of them. And of that group, there's a couple of those guys that I would like to have parted ways with a lot sooner. I would have never signed a couple of those guys that you mentioned, but some of them were productive for us. Some of us had some good games. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to build a good, positive culture, you got to have more Terry McLaurins on the team. You got to have more Kirk Cousins on the team. You got to have more Brandon Sheriffs on the team, Jonathan Allens, Deron Paynes on the team. These are guys that build your football team, because when you bring in young players, that's who you want them to look up to. They work hard. They're smart. They're team players. They're unselfish. And then we have too many of those other guys. Some of those new guys you bring in, the rookies and the free agents, they gravitate over there. Then all of a sudden you're happy.
Right.
Bad.
Right.
So, unfortunately, I didn't have the power of the axe where I could cut the guys where I wanted to. But we dealt with some of those guys. Some of those guys, they're okay.
DJ would have been gone earlier if you had that power. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I like Josh. I like Breeland. Breeland just didn't like when Josh came because Breeland thought he should have got that money. And then when we started trying to travel Josh with the best receiver, Breeland got a little upset, he's a competitive guy.
Yeah. I always liked Bashaud.
Yeah. He's a competitive guy. DJ and Zach, they're well documented. And Junior, he got hurt, tore both his Achilles, so he's really not in the equation.
Right.
He was productive for the games that he played when he was healthy. Unfortunately, he just blew his Achilles out twice.
But yeah, no, the DJ one was interesting because, it's funny because people saw him out at practice talking to the players. They always thought he was this big leader. Then you talk to the guys in the locker room, they're like, the D-backs there was a different thing, but like other guys didn't view him that way either. And I think it was one of those perception outside was different than inside.
Yeah, I think when you find a guy as a reporter, if I was a reporter, I would go out to the guy that's probably going to talk and give me a story. And
he gave us stories.
TJ was great at that.
He gave us stories.
Unfortunately, he didn't like me at all. I know that. He's already tweeted that many, many times. He didn't think I was worth a damn as a head coach. And that's his opinion, whatever. I just wish he would have, been a little more quiet about what we do between the walls of the Redskin Park. But, it is what it is. I appreciate what he did for it. But he was a story giver.
Yes, he was. And sometimes those stories are right around Christmas Eve, which wasn't always fun for a reporter. But I forgot, you brought up John Allen, Deron Payne. Last thing, what have you thought of their progression? Because John has turned into he was a really good player when you guys had him. He continues to get better and better.
Yeah, I think part of it is a system. I think when we had Minuski and Jim Tomsula, they come from the old school 3-4 type, two-gap type thing where you're holding off double teams and you're turning your body and you're making sure you're freeing up the linebackers to make plays and pass rushes secondary. I think he's been able to work on his getting up the field game, and he's very athletic, and him and Deron both. To just keep them inside and play double teams and stand at the line of scrimmage and then pass rush second, I think did them it was a bad deal for them. They still succeeded at it. They're still very good. Don't get me wrong, but I envisioned them more being let's get up the field, let's shoot the gaps. They're powerful and they're both quick. Have great hands. So to watch them play is kind of, damn it, I wish we would have done that more with those two guys. They were still young, obviously, and they're developing and they're understanding the game. And and they're both very intelligent football players. Have a great nose for the football, and they're just good guys.
Yeah, I mean, and they are. Are you when Payne? I remember with Payne was he a unanimous pick in that room for that, or were there other guys? Because there were a few other guys around that spot that were pretty good as well. Derwin James, I think, was still around.
He was unanimous after Vita Vea got picked.
Oh, okay.
Vita Vea got picked right before us, and the room was split up. Two guys. You know, I was a huge Duran Payne fan. I like Vita. If we would have got Vita, I'd been fine. But I really liked Payne. What he did against Georgia in the playoff game was he just took over the game. I was like, why don't we want this guy?
Those guys are pretty good.
So we like guys that hit the quarterback 6 times and have 5 tackles for loss and just destroy the other team. But they're both very good players. But once Vita got picked, Duran was an easy pick for us.
How's the golf game?
Okay. Ups and downs. Still stink at putting, but oh well, just fun.
And you enjoying the stuff working with Sean?
Yeah. You know, I'm not, too involved. You know, it just bounces ideas off me every now and then, and sometimes just need somebody to talk to from time to time. But it's good to be in it, be able to watch film and watch the NFL, still stay involved in that regard.
Jay, I appreciate it, man. Always like talking to you. Thanks for the insight. Great insight. Appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, John.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jay for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back on Thursday afternoon with a look at the Minnesota Vikings with ESPN Vikings reporter Kevin Seifert. Give some good analysis about what's going on with the Vikings. Why are they 6-1? And you can find on ESPN.com, you can read my story. Should be up Thursday about how good are the Commanders? Do we really know? We're going to find a lot about them in the next 2 weeks. So there you go, and I'll talk to you next time.